Hey Faith Family, welcome to the Beyond Sunday podcast at Calvary Bible, where we go beyond the Sunday sermon to explore some rabbit holes and to bring some biblical truths to the surface. We hope you enjoyed today's episode. Hi Randy.
Hello, welcome back.
Thank you. Good to be back. Michigan is where I was, vacation.
Yeah.
Did you know that there's a lake? Well, I know that you know there's a lake in Michigan, but there's a section of Lake Michigan that has waves.
Is the lake actually in Michigan?
It's bordering Michigan.
I was just asking.
Although, with the Upper Peninsula, it kind of surrounds it a little bit, so you might consider it like in Michigan.
Good.
And I'm sure there's lakes in Michigan too. But
so there are waves.
There's waves. Like our girls were riding these waves in on the boogie board, 15, 20 yards. So significant size waves. Not anything that I would waste my time on because I'm a pretty serious boogie boarder.
There you go.
I love that stuff.
Yeah, it's a good sized lake if it has waves.
Yeah. Lake Michigan. But so what's interesting is we are at two different beaches, and in the northern beach that we went to, there was like just really no waves worth considering. Yeah. But 20 minutes south, pretty significant waves. Oval Beach.
Oval.
So if you're in Michigan, Oval Beach has waves that are worth boogie boarding on for, the average boogie boarder.
Good.
Yeah, there you go.
I'm glad you had a good time.
I did. I also got a wet burrito recommendation from our buddy Bill Osborne, who lived there for a few years.
Good.
And he didn't disappoint.
Nice.
Yeah, so if you get, just to throw a little, reputation out his way, if you get a food recommendation from Bill Osborne, it's trustworthy.
Yeah.
Okay.
I have experienced the same.
Have you? Yeah.
Him.
He's like 3 for 3, 4 for 4 in my book. But no, it's good to be back, and it was refreshing to be with the Faith family on Sunday. Honestly, to be away for a week and miss a Sunday and be back with little responsibility.
Nice.
It was good.
Good for you.
Yeah, so I was glad to be back with folks.
Good.
And I'm glad to be back in the swing of things here. So, you ready?
Ready.
I was here on Sunday. I did listen.
Did you? Okay.
I did.
Thank you.
I did not hear the week before the sermon at the end of Matthew chapter 5. Mm-hmm. So maybe some of that will come up. I don't have any specific questions for that, but
good.
Still in the Sermon on the Mount. So it is applicable. So here on Sunday, you covered verses 1 through 18.
Well,
right, of chapter 6.
1 through 8, and then 16 through 18, because it picked back up on the fasting again.
So I was going to ask you this later, but since it came up now, are you going to circle back to what's commonly referred to as the Lord's Prayer there? Mm-hmm. Okay. Is that this upcoming Sunday?
That is. Ooh, okay. Yeah, Communion Sunday.
There you go. All right, excellent. Because I was wondering that, but it makes total sense why you separated it up that way. So we were in that section minus the Lord's Prayer part of it. And just this, this caution from Jesus to his audience saying, beware of practicing righteousness for your own reputation's sake, to be seen by others. And I just think that's such an easy trap to fall into. I don't know about yourself, but anytime I'm doing something that I think is a good thing and a righteous act, I'm immediately thinking, oh, why am I doing this? Am I doing this, for someone else? Am I helping the old lady across the street so that, the Mount Joy citizens say, man, what a good guy that Jonathan is? Or am I doing it because she could use a hand and I want to be gracious and kind? Mm-hmm. And so that's exactly, to me, it feels like what Jesus is getting at here. When you're doing these things, make sure you're doing them for God's glory and not your own glory. So one of the questions that came in this week was not about one of those 3 practices, which you highlighted and Jesus obviously brings up, giving, praying, or fasting, but it's another one of these righteous acts. It's a command of Jesus, of the Lord, to encourage one another. And so the question in that vein is, how do we practice encouraging one another without putting this stumbling block in front of people where, let's say I encourage you and say, hey, Randy, great sermon, but I don't want you to get a big head and become prideful and, not that I would worry about that. we all worry about that for all of us. But so you're getting what the question is. And then
I
conversely,
do.
part B to it, and I'll come back around to it, is how do we receive encouragement then without, becoming prideful or letting our own ego kind of get in the way of someone just being encouraging. So how do we encourage someone without, as best we can, causing them to stumble?
Yeah, let's start with that. Let's start with that first, with a person who may be saying, I need to be careful in doing one of the one another's, because in doing one of the one another's, I will be causing that person now to fall into the sin that Jesus identifies in chapter 6, something along those lines. So my reaction is that's not on you. That's not your responsibility. So what is your responsibility is to make sure that you practice the one another's, because they're commanded by our Lord as well. So what you wouldn't want to do is you wouldn't want to put yourself in that situation where you overthink this, and so that you disobey one commandment because you've taken it upon yourself to make sure that you help another person not disobey. That's just, I use the word overthink in that case, because I just feel like while I understand the question, you would not want to go down that trail. And probably the person who asked that probably doesn't want to go down that trail either. Sure. It's a legitimate, what should I do? And so let's put this in the context of what seems to be so far the overarching theme of this Sermon on the Mount. Almost all the instructions that Jesus is giving to me means that he's recreating me so that my self-concern is being pushed aside. In order to put this ultra-righteousness into practice, what has to happen is I have to be thinking less of my own self and my own concerns. And in this case, this is a sort of a subtle form of, I'm actually putting myself in a position of God, where I'm thinking, oh, wow, I'm going to hurt this other person by doing right. Think of look at the logic of that. It's right for me to encourage another brother or sister, but I can't do that, or I shouldn't do that, because that will hurt them. No, actually, it won't hurt them. It'll help them. It's on them how they respond. And we'll get to that part in a moment. But are you following me so far?
Yeah, I am.
At least the angle of should I hesitate in doing the one another's?
Yeah, no, you shouldn't. So one way that I'm kind of wondering, and what the look you're seeing on my face, I'm thinking through, like, in our culture with kids especially, sometimes it feels like they're overpraised, to the point where it's like, goodness, they can't take criticism, or that every 6-year-old thinks that they're the best at, whatever. So can you go too far in encouraging certain people to the point where it's like, they've got an unhealthy view of themselves?
The answer, I'm sure, is yes.
Okay.
I'm sure the answer is yes. But I wonder if I'm the one am I able to judge, and how would I judge that person is in that scenario? Yeah. Now, if I have specific evidence of that, then another probably needs to go into practice. Yeah. Right. So yeah, that's one side of it. Practicing the one another's and not worrying about the effect of it. What about the receiving part? That's the other end of it.
Yeah, the second part of the question, right? How do we receive encouragement? How do we receive, and it could be encouragement too in other ways, like, maybe I'm going through a rough time and someone, gives me a gift card to wherever, Dunkin' Donuts, say, hey, here's an encouragement.
That is encouragement.
How do I receive verbal encouragement or any kind of encouragement without, just receive it well?
Yeah. So once again, let's think about the self-concern aspect of this, which seems to keep it's It's very foundational for carrying out the ultra righteousness. So in this case, let's go back to that person doing the encouraging. The person doing the encouraging is not, since they are practicing a godly activity that the faith family needs, they should have no concept of themselves. In other words, they should not have the concern of, I might be hurting them, because they know that they're not.
Mm-hmm.
They're actually
Right.
doing the opposite.
Mm-hmm.
So there shouldn't be any thought about that from their perspective.
Right.
So that's sort of off the table. I'm not responsible for the other person's reaction. In the case of receiving it, though, I think the question goes back to, is Christ recreating me so that I am not focused on myself
Mm-hmm.
and receiving glory?
Mm-hmm.
So if I am not, then if you tell me, if you give me a compliment,
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to legitimately say thank you,
Mm-hmm.
and it's not going to detract from the glory of God,
Mm-hmm.
because I'm not focused on my glory. I'm focused on His, and I'm assuming that, especially in our context, that what you're thanking me for or complimenting me over or on is some kind of a ministry something along, especially
Sure.
for us in our context.
Yeah,
I mean.
right.
So I think the simple answer to this is to say, do you go about your day thinking about yourself, or are you thinking about God?
Yeah.
And so if somebody comes along and you're thinking about God and they give you a compliment, or they encourage, let's go back to the encouragement, because it was both sides.
Yeah.
If someone encourages you, do you take the encouragement as it's intended? Are you encouraged by it? Is your life now filled with gratitude and thankfulness because of it?
Mm-hmm.
If it is, your heart's in a good place. If that begins to if that encouragement puffs you up or makes you think about yourself and your accomplishments, this is where the Sermon on the Mount teaching should ring in your ear, in your mind, in your heart, and you should quickly say, God, you know my heart. You know how good that sounds and feels to me, but I need to redirect this to you.
Mm-hmm.
And you do that in an instant.
Yeah.
I mean, as soon as your conscience instructs you, that's the moment to put this sermon to me into practice.
Yeah. So your boss says to you, hey, you're doing a really good job at whatever your role is,
Yeah.
mechanic, manager, consultant,
Yeah.
whatever. This whole sermon, and I'm glad you pointed it out, because I've seen this kind of recurring theme pop up. It's constantly just redirecting us back to our heart.
Mm-hmm.
What's Jesus recreating inside of us from the inside out, and then from the inside, that heart of humility and just concern for God's glory and not mine is what should be manifesting itself. And so I think that's a good word for whoever it is out there, and however you're raising your kids. Someone compliments you on, man, your kids were really, well behaved, or whatever.
Yeah.
Taking a compliment well, being encouraged by that, and just the benefit of that kind of an atmosphere is a great thing.
Yeah.
But then not letting our heart head off into one of those, ditches that are very close by.
And I think one of the reasons why Jesus hits the big three, right? So giving to the poor, praying, and fasting, is because in the first century, these are three huge religious observances. Or, as I said on Sunday, you could also translate this religious requirements. This is practicing your righteousness as a phrase, is talking about a righteousness in the form of observances or requirements. So he picks these big three. So what's really important for us, I think, if you're trying to put this into practice this week, is to go back to the issue of where there's repeated in this text, as the hypocrites do. So Jesus sees this, he recognizes this, and he uses this as a teaching tool for his followers.
Right.
So for me, And I know I said this to some folks on Sunday because a lot of us met later on in the day. And at some point I said to someone, I wish I would have spent a little bit more time on the hypocrisy part. Because now we hit on it some, but this is the place where you take those big three.
Yeah.
And if there was any practices where you would seem to be spiritual, it would be these three. If people watched you and knew you to be doing these three, then you're being seen as a very super spiritual person. And so I think what we want to do this week is to make sure that we're living the Christian life, we're being a Christ follower with no hypocrisy. In other words, it's genuine. We are sincerely following Christ, and it shows, and people know that. And we're not trying to put on a mask or pretend that we're something we're not. We're real.
Yeah. That's really good. Along those lines, but in a different vein, I was asking myself the question, am I practicing works of righteousness?
At all.
Do you know what I mean? Because it's implied here that these people are.
When you do.
Yeah, exactly. And so I think that's a good question to ask myself too. Am I doing these things? And I mean, the list of things that you can do, acts of righteousness, is a mile long. Yeah. And so just being in the habit of doing good works that God has prepared, beforehand for us to do, and stepping into those acts. Yeah. So question one, are you doing righteous works, righteous acts? And then the great follow-up question to keep us from going in a bad direction is make sure you're doing it for the right reasons.
You can think about how hard our positions are difficult, especially because of this trap. So think this through, right? So I get my day started.
Yeah.
And what if I don't pray the disciples' prayer, which we're covering on Sunday, right? I don't pray it. And then I get to Sunday and I stand up on Sunday and I passionately tell people, at least with my level of passion, I say, this is an important prayer, but I haven't prayed it all week. Yeah. So you can see the kind of trap that we're in often, where we have to lead the way as far as being genuine and sincere, right? Yeah. We come to the table, not this table, but this table or any table. We come to Calvary Bible Church, and there needs to be a genuine love for God, love for neighbor, that's now being practiced for the right reasons. So it is this sincerity part was a big thing, and I just hope that all of our faith family just sees the importance of I am living a real Christian life, which includes all the battles back and forth, the fight for faith, the obedience and the disobedience, sort of the paradox that we covered a little bit on Sunday.
Yeah. So another practical question, kind of getting at the heart motive there, is we want to do these things for the right reasons. Is one of the right reasons, is it okay to have a reason being, I want a heavenly reward?
I think that's such a I don't know what you call it. It's fascinating to me why we push back against rewards.
Yeah.
I
is it a Lancaster County thing?
No,
is it a Maine thing?
I think it's.
Is it a fundamentalist thing?
I think
a little bit.
I think it is. I think
Capital F
back,
fundamentalist.
when we did this, a week or two back?
2 weeks ago, but it was last week's podcast.
I think it's part of somewhere along the line. Many of us were taught that if we're in it for the reward, it cheapens it.
Yeah, it's the wrong reason.
But then I've got to go back to this text and say to all of us, did we read this together and see Jesus arguing solely on the basis of rewards? What do I do with that? I have to say that if Jesus argues that way with us, that it is right for us to want to be rewarded, and that does not detract from the glory of God. Some astute reader of the Bible might say something like this. They might say, oh, I know how this is going to go, because at the end of the story, whatever rewards that I'm given, do you know how to finish that?
Yeah, you throw at the feet of
Jesus.
Jesus.
Just give them back.
Yeah, right.
And so I could see an astute Bible reader moving in that direction, and there's nothing wrong with that direction at all. I think what's important is that all of us should be eager to be rewarded by God, because that is the best day of our lives. I mean, I can't think of any. You think about all the excitement of payday. There was do this quickly. One of the Amazon drivers, a young fella that was new to the neighborhood. I saw him twice in the same day. He said, "I love this neighborhood." I said, "Are you new to this?" He said, "Yeah." He said, "I've only been driving a little while, but I love the neighborhood." And the second time I saw him, as he's walking sort of fast away from me back to the truck, he said, "And it's almost payday."
Right.
And you remember those days when we used to work. Remember when we used to work for a living?
Yes.
Do you remember that?
Yeah. Right. Especially your first
back then
when
a paycheck is coming, that is the best. And so I just hope that you're able to think about the reward that's coming from the Heavenly Father, and that is going to be your best day. I mean,
absolutely. Yeah, it's absolutely a great day, because just like you said, we're getting the reward. And I think it's worth pointing out here too, that Jesus, in his very last words that you covered, and your Father who sees in secret will reward you. Why would he say that if a reward is not something that he thinks should be an okay thing to motivate us? But it's not necessarily the only thing that motivates us either. So
I might put it this way too. Maybe we can think this through. If you're struggling with the joy of the reward, I would suggest that that's a sign that you're not thinking about the character of your Heavenly Father and the kind of gift that you think you'd get from him. I would say to you, reflect on what you think about God, because I think the greater you see him, the greater you will have anticipation and desire for what he's going to give you. I mean, that's just, I mean, there's a lot of ways you could think about this, right?
Sure.
I wonder what I'm going to get for Christmas from so-and-so.
Yeah.
Because you know that so-and-so through the years has really given good gifts.
Yeah.
So you kind of look forward to that, right?
Yeah.
And now just take that infinitely further and say, I should be really excited about getting a reward from my Heavenly Father.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the way I think I would try to frame this if I was struggling with a reward deal.
Yeah. He's a good Father who gives good gifts.
The best gifts.
That are absolutely worth getting excited about.
And it pays literally because of this word. And I didn't hit this much, but it actually pays to be righteous.
Yeah.
It pays to be righteous.
Yeah.
I would argue, especially in Matthew's gospel, it pays now. Yeah, even though it may not seem like it, it does pay now, and you know for sure it pays later. So yeah, big time and payoff.
I don't think inflation has anything to do with the value of the payment there.
Imagine the mixing into a podcast like this, the spirituality of that recent lottery ticket winner. Did you hear about how high it was? I think if I get this right, somewhere I think it got to be over $1 billion. Wow. And somebody, they had a winner.
It wasn't you.
It was not me. Michelle and I joked about what would it be? What would we do? And,
preach the next week, probably.
Yeah. But anyway, just think about that reward. I mean, that reward is like, whoa, that jackpot was huge. Well, we're talking about something far superior.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good.
It does pay. It pays off to be ultra righteous at the core of our motives. That pays off.
Yeah, that's difficult, but so worth it. So good.
Yeah, and we could say and so we can say it's difficult, and we can also say, remember in the context of the Sermon on the Mount, that all of these commandments highlight the depth at which Christ is working in us. So he's creating this sense of my motives are pure because I want the glory of God. My motives are pure because God has done something about my self-worth and so forth. So
good.
Yeah.
All right. So we're right in the middle of this still Sermon on the Mount, which is great. I'm enjoying it. And yeah, we trust it's helpful for you guys too in your own, disciple making journey, your pathway. So if you have any questions about this podcast, feel free to email them in podcast@cpcmj.com, or during the sermon on Sunday, the Lord's Prayer coming up here. Goodness, how many people could recite that? And so I'm excited for Sunday as well. So Sunday sermon, any Sunday, send those questions in. We love talking about just the practical implications of it beyond Sunday morning, from 10:15 to 11:45 or whatever. So, yeah.
And it was important today that we end this podcast in a shorter time than Andy and Ray did.
Oh, yeah.
That's important.
Those guys.
And second, I did you hear this? That someone actually fell asleep during the podcast.
No.
Yeah.
Podcast.
I told Ray.
Okay.
I told Ray on Sunday night, I said, Ray, you're not going to believe this. Somebody told me that they fell asleep during your podcast. I said, that podcast was way too long.
Oh, way too long.
So I hope we're shorter than that.
Thankfully, Andy was trying to push him along.
He was.
Constantly.
But it wasn't working.
Ray's got too much on his mind.
Yeah. Yes.
You should get one of their hats. You fit in with them. You know what I mean?
Michelle's father had one of those years ago. Oh my goodness, that's just a great thing. Yeah.
Those guys are too much.
They are.
Anyway, hope this is helpful. We love you guys. We love the other guys too.
Yeah,
Ray and Andy.
We do.
For the most part.
Yep.
All right, we'll see you guys Sunday. Take care. Have a great week. Thanks again for joining us on today's episode. And remember, our Sunday sermons are meant to lead us to a life of worship beyond Sunday.